Hello. Today I'm reading from Saving Winslow by Sharon Creech, published by Scholastic Incorporated. I'm reading chapters 22 through 25. Chapter 22. Something the matter? It was spring. The early days of spring, when the shock of bright green sprouting from the ground and from the trees was new and cheery, and the daylight was filtered through a gauzy curtain. Louis was out in the yard with Winslow, who was galloping about clumsily, and it was one of those good days when everything seemed right with the world. Nora came by. She said she was just out walking, which is what she always said. She appeared smaller and more vulnerable without her heavy black coat and boots and yellow hat. And as she came through the gate, she seemed worried. Something the matter? Louis asked. No, not really. Winslow eagerly bumped his head against her arm until Nora petted him. She smiled in spite of herself. He's so used to you now, Louis said. I think he was expecting you. He kept looking up and down the street. Oh, it makes me sad. Sad? Why sad? I thought you'd be happy about that. Well, what's going to happen to him? Max said you can't keep him here much longer. He's getting too big and too loud. This wasn't a surprise to Louis. His parents had brought it up earlier in the week. Winslow was getting big, and even the makeshift pen they'd added to the back of the garage didn't have enough room for him. And his new loud braying was becoming annoying, not only to the neighbors, but also to Louis's parents. Nora leaned her head against Winslow's neck, her own black curls mixing in with Winslow's gray and black tufts. I bet you have to get rid of him. He'll never be this free and happy again. He'll probably get sick and die of sadness. Louis tugged at Winslow's head, pulling it away from Nora. Why do you always expect the worst? He had said. Nora pulled Winslow's head back toward her. To be prepared. Why do you always stupidly expect the best? Stupidly? Louis yanked Winslow's head back again, wrapping his arms around Winslow's neck. I don't always stupidly expect the best. I worry about the worst and hope for the best. Nora stood very still, her arms stiff at her sides. Well, you must be disappointed a lot, and you must be sad a lot. I'm not. I'm realistic, she said, and you're being mean. Am not. Louis leaned close to Winslow's face. Am I, Winslow? Am I being mean? Winslow's lips flapped and he sucked his teeth. See, Nora said, he thinks you are being mean. He agrees with me. No, he doesn't. He agrees with me. Winslow butted each of them with his head and kicked his hind legs in the air. Chapter 23. A letter from Gus. The collection of Gus's postcards and letters was kept in a blue bowl in the living room. Every now and then, when Louis or his parents were especially missing Gus, they would select one to reread. Louis chose one addressed to him to take up to his room. Hey, Louis. I miss you, Louis. Are you getting older? Don't get too old before I come home, okay? I wish I could be there to see you and Mom and Dad. I miss home. What's this I hear about a donkey? Really, a donkey? Today I ate a snake. Really, I had to kill it and cook it and eat it. Don't tell Mom. Remember me, Gus. Louis read the letter while lying on Gus's bed. When he finished, he pretended that he was Gus lying there and kicked his shoes off from the back like Gus did, tossed a pillow over his own bed like Gus used to do. He regarded Gus's trophies lined up on the bookcase and Gus's baseball hat stained with sweat. Louis opened the closet and smelled the smell of Gus on his clothes. He chose Gus's favorite football jersey, the black and red one with the number 21 on it, and put it on. He stood in front of the mirror and said, I am Gus. Then he lay down again on Gus's bed and felt the enormous absence of his belly. Chapter 24. Don't go. With the arrival of warmer days and nights, Winslow was now kept in a pen attached to the garage. Louis's father had fashioned an overhang that extended from the garage roof, and he had enclosed part of the pen to give Winslow shelter from wind and rain and sun. Another solution would have to be found soon, because there was not a yard in which you could easily keep a donkey. Not only was the yard too small, but it was also too close to the neighbors. Winslow was now practicing his braying, emitting croaky, loud honks and yaws throughout the day. Neighbors begged for mercy. The donkey's a cute fellow, I'll give you that, but the noise he makes gives me a migraine right here behind my eyes. I think he's practicing a warning, Louis said, when a stranger's around. You mean a stranger like the mailman, a deliverman, a cat, squirrel? Sometimes he seems to be singing, the neighbor said. I've noticed that, Louis agreed. But it's awful singing. If that's singing, then he needs lessons. Most annoyed was Mrs. Tooley, who lived next door on the opposite side of Mac and his family. Mrs. Tooley had never been friendly, so it was not a surprise that she would complain. When Louis's mother had taken a pot of soup to her one day, Mrs. Tooley said, "No, thank you. I don't like neighbor stuff." There was never a sign of Mr. Tooley, and only rarely were there other visitors. In the fall, when Louis had offered to rake the leaves from the yard, she said, "Leaves, schmeaves, let 'em be." In the winter, when Louis had finished shoveling their own walk, he carried on shoveling Mrs. Tooley's. She opened the door and said, "I'm not paying you." "That's okay, so stop it." Now, Mrs. Tooley complained about Winslow. She would fling open the kitchen window and shout, "That donkey wakes up the baby! Make it stop that noise!" Mac's family did not complain, but Mac did mention that Winslow might prefer living with other animals. "What about your Uncle Pete's farm? Isn't that where the donkey came from in the first place?" Louis could not bear the thought of Winslow leaving. Who would look after him as well as he did? And what if Winslow got sick again? What if Winslow thought Louis was abandoning him? At night, Louis looked over at Gus's empty bed and thought, "First Gus goes, now Winslow? Don't go, don't go, don't go," Louis whispered into his pillow. Chapter 25. Winslow was curious. Winslow was increasingly curious, testing his curiosity most often with his mouth. He ate through 2 power cords, fortunately unplugged, and nibbled plastic buckets, newspapers, and jackets. He licked an oil spill on the garage floor, munched on the doorframe, and chomped on an old tarp. Winslow trotted from one thing to another, smelling and tasting. Every few minutes he returned to Louis and bumped him with his head, as if to say, "I'm still here, are you?" "He's like a little lamb," Mac said. "He follows you everywhere. He probably thinks you're his mother." "What?" "Well, think about it. You're the only parents he's known. He doesn't even know what another donkey is. He doesn't know that he's a donkey. He probably thinks he's a human like you." That night Louis dreamed that his own parents were donkeys. In his dream, he thought, "Then I must be a donkey too." Winslow brayed as if in response. That sound, maybe it came from outside and maybe it was in his dream. Louis couldn't be sure, for he was still in his dream.